So today's LiBCM beta test issue is quite interesting, but there you can see I've just finished building the 4 packs that I've got remaining in stock, and these are all spoken for now in the UK. So this one's the interesting one. So all these other 3 have all charged and worked correctly. This one, when I plugged it in, immediately started beeping and gave the 5-volt maximum cell and 0-volt minimum cell issue, which is almost certainly to be a bad connection between the cell blocks and the LiBCM board. So possibly the harness here or harness, etc. So basically you need to do some fault finding. Now when the firmware gets updated, when John's back online, the firmware will identify which cell is the highest and which cell is the lowest. At the moment it doesn't currently show that on the display, so you don't know which one of the blocks has the issue or has the connection issue. Now I was suspecting these harnesses, in particular this one at the far end, because that's not actually locked in, but it wasn't those, and it was actually this one. And here we have the suspect part. So I was testing the continuity of these pins to the ones at the other end. So to do that I just put some SIL pins in the socket there, and then was testing the continuity through the wires, and eventually I discovered that the red wire here, I think it was cell 37 positive, 37 positive, 38 or whatever, whichever one. Anyway, it was there was no continuity along this red wire. So the question then was to identify whether it was problem was in the wire, or whether it was at this end, or whether it was that end. So I bared the wire very, just took a little bit of the insulation off there, as you can see, and I used my continuity tester to test it, and this side was okay. There was no continuity here through to the pin at the bottom, but there was no continuity at this end. So looking very closely at this, now you probably can't see this, you may be able to, but basically a crimp has been happened over the top of the insulation and not on the bare wire. So the part that crimps to hold the insulated part of the cable is correct, but the bit after that has been crimped over the top of the insulation rather than over the top of the bare wire, so clearly there's no connection there. Now I was able to get this pin out, which is pretty tricky, from the connector using one of these bunches of cheap connector de-pinners basically, and this one was too thick, so I had to file the end to flat on some sandpaper so that it would go into the little pin holes there, and then you can push the pin out. So what I've got to do now is try and, because I don't have any spare pins like this, so I've got to try and fix this pin, and you can see there the crimp in the wrong place, and try and push it back in, and then hopefully if I can get it back in, what I might do is I might drop a blob of super glue down the back, because I may damage the retaining mechanism during the repair, because I've got to try and get that off there now and solder or something onto there to make it a proper connection. So I might put a blob of super glue in the back just to hold it back into position before I plug it back in. So that should hopefully fix that problem. I will update shortly as to whether it has. So that was the fault finding. So obviously it'll be a lot easier once the firmware tells you which cell or which cells are having the issue, and then it will narrow it down to which connector it is immediately, and then you can just continuity check the wires and see where the problem is.